Alarm bells are ringing for the Brisbane Broncos following the 40-point drubbing at the hands of Melbourne on Good Friday. Penrith and Parramatta remain undefeated after the first month of football, and the Warrington Wolves get their first win of the season in style, thumping the Lee Centurions 44 points to 12. Yes, hello and welcome back to the Sideline Chat podcast, a one-stop shop for rugby league. Connor Marcel is back with you again, and this time, after dragging his feet for 3 weeks, I finally managed to fish him out of the river after never mind. But welcome back, Mr. Mark Hendry.
Thank you. It's great to be finally back in person. And
yeah, I just had to break you out of the concrete boots after 3 weeks, so all's well that ends well. You might want to check your gums for seaweed anyway. But never mind that. That's irrelevant. Now, we're here to talk rugby league. So, what do we have to start off but the round 4 review and our round 5 preview of our debrief series. So, starting off, the Manly Seagulls and the Penrith Panthers. My God, where do Manly go from here? Just ask me, where do Manly go from here?
Where did Manly go from here? Well, I don't know. Hopefully up very, very soon, but it doesn't look promising as what was it, another 40-point flogging?
46-6 defeat at the hands of the Penrith Panthers.
It's just another 40-point deficit. Just say 40-point deficit, 40-plus point deficit.
Well, this is the second 40-point margin they've conceded after the Roosters in round 1, and then almost conceding 40 against St George Illawarra in round 3.
It's not a good time to be a Seagulls fan. Everyone thought with Kieran Foran coming back in, they were going to be up high in the top 8 for pretty much all season, but that has not gone to plan. But I'm not saying it's because of John Tavorovich being out, but that's probably the only reason I can think of why they're going so poorly at the moment.
Well, I think that, and defensively, Manly are brittle, like peanut butter frozen kind of brittle. Just, they're easy to break through. And you noticed it with Penrith's left edge in particular when you got Kikau, To'o, and Jerome Luai lined up out on that side, with Kikau going at Cherry Evans, going at Jack Gajeski, and going at Moses Suli. Penrith were able to gain good ground and score plenty of tries down Manly's right side, which, after the drubbing they copped against the Dragons down their right-hand side, it's only gotten worse from this point.
The only thing I can think of is for the Seagulls is they need to put the reserve grade side as a first grade side and first grade back to reserve grade.
You think
that might be the only difference.
So you think Des Hasler should contemplate swinging the axe over the next month and a bit?
Well, if it means for better results, well then yes. So you might not see a Dylan Walker playing or a Jake Tavorovich playing. I'm just not saying Jake Tavorovich is going to get axed or anything. But I'm just using him as an example and like Dylan Walker as an example. But it might have to come to that case very, very soon.
Well, some things have got to change. Moses, we'll get more to it when we talk about the round 5 previews, but Moses Suli has already paid the price for poor defence, and so we'll see how that pans out later on. But the only try Manly have managed to score, it was off the back of an offload through the middle of the field, and they caught Penrith off guard around the middle with Cade Cuss getting in off a Sean Kepi offload.
Yes. That's pretty much the only positive out of that game, to be completely honest. Yeah, Manly, I would no longer be a supporter. They are looking to be getting the wooden spoon alongside the Cowboys at the moment.
And the next team we are also talking about that is a contender for the wooden spoon at this stage is the Canterbury Bulldogs, coming off their 3rd straight week of a donut result, going down 38-0 to the South Sydney Rabbitohs.
I wouldn't say a wooden spoon contender. They are getting better yes or no, they did point all the points so far this season on the board against Newcastle, and then have gone 3 straight without getting any points.
All right.
But they are trying.
You're a little bit more optimistic than I am about my own team. Where do you see the Dogs improving?
When?
Where?
Where? Well, probably maybe once Flanagan. I'm not just saying him, but maybe if he has a consistent half partner, because yes, he's been a little bit inconsistent half partners already. But if they get that right, then they will be up there because they've been close a few times, like multiple times, especially against South. I was so close of scoring, but I couldn't get over that line. But in all defence, the Rabbitohs' defence is really good as well. So,
Well, I think South Sydney kicked it into gear after that confidence-building win over the Roosters, and it was clearly on display with Damien Cook,
yeah,
137 running meters, creating 2 line breaks, and that led to 2 try assists that went straight through the middle of the Bulldogs' defensive lineup. Then they went both right and left with Josh Mansour and Alex Johnston going over for tries. And then the icing on the cake, not only did Adam Reynolds set Latrell Mitchell off a nice little grubber kick, then he got the charge down at the end of the game to score the winning try for the Rabbitohs. And you got to think with this contract situation Adam Reynolds has got himself into, someone should be telling, is it Blake Solly, Rabbitohs CEO, get this bloke re-signed.
yes, I completely agree. If they don't re-sign him and they lose him, they're going to go downhill, in my view.
It would be a great, great loss to the game of rugby league if Adam Reynolds ended up wearing the navy blue of the Cowboys, the maroon and gold of the Broncos, or even the black, white, and blue of the Sharks.
Well, any other team than the South Sydney Rabbitohs. He's a junior there. He knows the club pretty much inside out, you could say.
He won a grand final with them, and he's the captain, their best goal kicker they got. Oh, well, even though you got Latrell Mitchell. But he's been a loyal servant, like John Sutton. But he's been let down by the last administration's attempts with Greg Inglis and Sam Burgess signing them onto long-term deals only to retire medically or not see out their contract deals. Reynolds should not pay the mistake of the previous South board for 2 players that were busted up at the back end of their career.
But they were medically injured. Medically retired, I should say. Adam Reynolds, he's hardly had any injuries in his whole career.
I can't remember one time Adam Reynolds has not played less than 15 games a year, apart from maybe his debut season. But apart from that,
yeah,
he's on your team sheet literally every single week.
Yeah, barring like when he's out for rep, like
when he was at that peak of reaching Origin, and even then.
Yeah. But they need to re-sign him. But with all that noise going on in the background and the speculation about his future and that, he puts it behind him, and the whole club puts it behind them, and they still come out and perform week in, week out, which is a really good sign that they're a good team, combining really well. Because other teams, they'll get distracted and they'll fall apart. But South has shown that all this noise, they're probably coming out to try and help Reynolds get a contract, but it's looking good.
Well, good segue about falling apart, because one side that did fall apart on our second game of a Good Friday coverage, the Brisbane Broncos going down 40-6 against the Melbourne Storm. What the hell was that start in the first 20 minutes from the Broncos? What was that? Where Xavier Coates scores against the run of play, with Melbourne having the ascendancy earlier, but then everything leading up to half time, it was not just all Melbourne Storm, it was all Ryan Pappenhausen.
4 tries and 4 goals in 11 minutes.
What was that? What did we watch? Because I felt like we had just watched the craziest scoring blitz this year. No questions.
This year or this decade?
This year.
I know this decade's only young, but the past decade, I don't know.
I can't remember the fastest someone had scored 4 tries.
No, I can't remember either. It should have been called the Ryan Pappenhausen team. It was just him. He put on that show pretty much by himself.
Well, it was pretty much, there was a sign on the coverage, I think Channel 9, it was Iron Ryan. Well, it was definitely Iron Ryan, because he rocketed his way solidly through the Broncos' middle.
Yeah.
And the big problem is, Brisbane's defence, once that first Pappenhausen try was scored, they let the next 3 in, George Jennings 2 tries down the right-hand side, and then Cameron Munster back on the left-hand side. And they were leading 6-0 after the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. So all the confidence they had not only last week, but the first try against Melbourne, all the confidence, like you said, after Ryan Pappenhausen on his first try, they just crumbled. Is that a pressure thing, or is that just poor defense yet again?
Well, this is not new for the Broncos. They have faded out after just one try. That's all it takes. You score once against the Broncos, you're pretty much set to win the game. You look at Canberra, you look at Parramatta, I believe, even when they were competitive. Once you get that one try on the board, the Broncos drop their heads and it's
like they go back into their shell and hide, and like they're scared to come out. But maybe they should. If they start coming out of their shell, they can play better. And as we saw against the Bulldogs when they won by 24 points, they can do it, but they need to do it more consistently and week in, week out.
They just need to play 80 minutes and be more resilient in defence, because conceding 8 tries, that is not resilience. That is capitulation of the worst degree. And for Kevin Walters getting his first run as a head coach in more than 10 years, this is not the start he wants to try and justify why he was picked as the Broncos head coach in the first place.
Well, not just Kevin Walters. If any club had that start to a season or whatever, no coach will want that start the year. But especially as a new coach coming into the club that is, well, used to be the dominant club in Queensland.
A team that is basically the personification of success amongst Australia's top sporting icons.
Yeah, it used to be. Now, they're nowhere. Absolutely nowhere.
It's been a steady decline for the Broncos since 2006. They've had good opportunities here and there. 2015 and 17, you'd have to say, were the closest years in the last 15. But apart from that, they've turned over coaches. They've let the wrong players go. They've let the right players go, I should say. Kept the wrong players on big money, and now they're paying the price for it. And it's a big, big price.
I'd say since when they started slowly going downhill was after that Golden Point Grand Final loss to Cowboys. That's when I felt they started going downhill. And last year, they just went rock bottom. Literally rock bottom, got the swoon for the first time in their history.
Yep, first time in their 32-year history.
So from a club that's gone, it's been at one stage a very dominant force when they had players like Lockyer. But now, the future is not very bright at the moment for Brisbane.
Well, the only bright sparks are Payne Haas. And you could probably say Xavier Coates as well. I mean, he's in the shitty Broncos side. He's still their leading try scorer. What did he get? A double against Parramatta. He got another double against the Dogs, and he got another try against Melbourne.
The only one against Melbourne.
Yes, the only one against Melbourne.
Yeah. But yet again...
Oh, and I believe he also scored... he scored another try against the Titans and set another one up for Tessie New. So he's basically scored in every single Brisbane game that they've gone on to lose.
Yeah. With the Storm, as I'm not quite sure if Connor mentioned it on my behalf last week. Well, I might have mentioned it before I went away. The Storm have shown that they can do it without Cameron Smith still. Like, yes, they got Pappenhausen, they got Munster there, they got Hughes there. They still got a bulk, and even with a Harry Grant, because if he's out injured, they're still playing top footy, regardless of their injuries and that. But it was kind of a bit of an easy game against Brisbane. So
it was an easy game.
It was to be expected. It's going to be a fairly easy game.
Well, what turned out to be an easy game is our first of the Easter Saturday clashes. The Cronulla Sharks downing the North Queensland Cowboys 48-10.
Now, as I said in my notes last week, I was going to tip the Cowboys. But that was based on it being on Sunshine Coast. But it did get moved to Sydney, and if I thought about it ahead, I should tip the Sharks. But, oh well. The Cowboys, they did have an intercept try.
It was a drop ball from Chad Townsend that just went out the back, hitting no one. And then Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow just races away the score at the other end.
As soon as he got that ball and started bolting, no one was going to catch him.
And that was when it was locked up at 6 apiece, and the Sharks, that game could have gone either way, but it didn't. And by the end of it, the Cowboys' right edge defense, regardless of whether you had Masters or Clifford or Carl Felt in that lineup, the Sharks went to town with Matt Moylan, Connor Tracy, and Marwin Hiroti. They tore the side apart. Half of the tries the Sharks scored were down the right hand side of the Cowboys' defensive lineup, and Chad Townsend, he was peppering the other side with little kicks for Kennedy, I think passes with Teague Wilton, and ending up Josh Dugan for tries, and then you had Will Kennedy out the back scheming as usual.
Yep. But what also helped the Sharks was their goal kicking. For the first time in, I don't know how long.
In forever. The first time in forever.
The first time in forever they actually got all of their conversions, which was 8 from Chad Townsend. They have improved that goal
He was
kicking.
a standout. Almost half of the try assists came off Chad Townsend. And of course, Connor Tracy being asked to play out of position at centre with all the injuries and the suspensions the Sharks have incurred, he did rather well.
He did. As we will preview later, I won't say anything now. But yeah, pretty much wherever you put Connor Tracy, he will do his absolute best. And as we saw against the Cowboys, he did play really good out of position. Sharks, well, they pretty much took control. After the Cowboys surprisingly leveling the score early was a bit of a surprise. And we thought, I thought, maybe. But it just shows that their record in Sydney is still bad.
The only real try the Cowboys constructed is because we've talked about this in the past, I think after the trial match with the Sharks and the Dogs. Matt Moylan was influential in helping with that left edge of the Sharks when they're at full strength.
Yep.
But it was also the way that the Dogs got back into it is by going at Matt Moylan.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Valentine Holmes did. He went at Matt Moylan and scored that second try for the Cowboys when it was practically all said and done too late.
Well, it was practically all said and done at half time when the Sharks were leading 36-6 at half time. It was pretty much
6 tries to 1, and then the Cowboys somewhat, would you say, made it competitive in the second half, or is it still a little bit too late?
Probably still a little bit too late. Their last try was pretty much a consolation try, really. But who knows?
And it's the same story with Kevin Walters. Todd Payton's come into a club that has been deteriorating for years. It has not been the same since the 2017 grand final, and he had to leave the safety net of the Warriors to turn out that he's got problems big time. From not being able to score to not being able to score or to take control to getting smashed in 2 consecutive weeks, because this is the second time the Cowboys' defense has been put through the ringer.
I feel the last competitive game the Cowboys played was against the Dragons in round 2. And since then, quickly downhill. I thought when Todd Payton went to the Cowboys, based on what he did at the Warriors, I thought he's going to go to the Cowboys and continue his form of coaching. Yeah, well, that has not gone to plan.
No.
Not what I thought. It could be a club thing. It could be the club not adapted to his coaching style, where you think by 4 weeks then they'll have adapted to his coaching style by now. But clearly it's not a coach.
Chopping and changing and long-term injuries that might even end in retirement if you're Michael Morgan. That hasn't helped. Not having Taumalola on the park hasn't helped. And now you have got Josh McGuire coming out in the press saying, look, we're shit. I want out before all the shit properly sinks. So
yep.
Peyton's got problems he needs to answer. And this is not everyone thinks with the Cowboys, it's a quick turnaround. They're just like, you got Holmes, you got Morgan, you got Drinkwater, you got Felt, Tabuai Fido, and the likes. And it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to be top 8.
Yeah.
And then you're deflated. And it's people like me that say, when are you going to wake up and realize the Cowboys are not the same immortal side that finished 3rd and beat the Broncos in that grand final? There's no Jonathan Thurston. No. There's no Matt Scott.
No.
They're not there. And Michael Morgan's not 2017 Michael Morgan.
No. He, like as you said, he could be retired by the end of the year. Even retired by mid-year.
Or even in the next few weeks.
Or even so. Or even the next few days. Who knows? Yeah, the Cowboys are pretty much in a similar position to Manly.
It's a question.
Battle for a wooden spoon right there. Cowboys Manly. I've said it now. 4 weeks in, I'm saying it right now. Battle wooden spoon right there. Yep. Discount the Dogs because they won't be in it. It'll be Cowboys Manly fight for the spoon.
All right. Well, you've heard it first here from Mark Hendry after having his concrete boots taken away from him. Moving on, we have got the second of the double-header at Cogra because of the relocation from Queensland. Everyone thought this was going to be a lot closer between the Gold Coast Titans and the Canberra Raiders, but at the end of the day, Raiders walked away 20 points to 4.
Yes. Even myself, I thought it was going to be a lot closer game. I don't know if that was because of the late relocation. That might have had a bit of a factor into it, but who knows. What I liked about this game, well, not just the game, it's about one player and his stat. It's good to see that Jared Croker is now equal on the most points scored by a player, equal on in fourth with eighth immortal
Andrew Johns.
That is so good to see. He is, you could say, a very underrated player.
Well, he is underrated because you'd think the way Croker plays week in, week out, he should be playing Origin for the Blues and he should be representing Australia. Yet you look at guys like your Jack Whitens and your potentially now you're looking at your future Blue Stars, Zach Lomax, Stephen Crichton, and Bradman Best, and you're thinking, Jared who?
Yeah, I'd say Laurie Daly, the former Blues coach, or even Brad Fittler when he first started coaching the Blues, have missed the opportunity to put him in the Origin arena because you've got Steve Crichton coming through. They're going to play him in the next few years. Lomax, he could potentially debut this year. Whiten, he's a standout player. He can play centre or in the halves. And he's had all the previous other centres and that. He's kind of been looked over, if you could say. Like, he hasn't even been in the Blues camp.
Well, I suppose when your name is Josh Morris and you have a long career with the Blues and then you can chop and change it, whether you're Josh Dugan or Michael Jennings, it is a bit of a hard look to try and get in, and especially when Greg Inglis was at his terrifying best.
I'd say, unfortunately for Jared Croker, his days of trying to be in the Blue squad is outnumbered.
Well, I'll tell you what isn't outnumbered for Croker. He still can chase down Jonathan Thurston and move into third overall, potentially by the end of this season.
Potentially, yes. Depending if he gets pretty much all the conversions and scores a lot of tries between now and the end of the year.
The goal is 2,222 career points. And
it is doable.
Yeah, so he would need to get going now, but it would be a long miracle if he somehow did. Actually, no, what I said was wrong. He's, 1,776?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so he would need about almost 500 points this year. All right, I'll correct myself. Not this year he'll beat Jonathan Thurston, but in the terms of his contract, which lasts for the next 3 seasons, he will move into third overall.
Oh, no doubt about that.
And if he plays on probably, what would you say, 35, 36, that he might be able to challenge the great Hazem Masri and Cameron Smith?
It is a possibility. Well, excuse me. The rate he plays and kicks, he's a pretty good. He's good. He's got good. A good conversion or goal kicking accuracy in that. So, yeah, it's possible. Just quickly touch on the Titans because we're mostly focused on the Raiders and that. They can't. Would you say they weren't in it, or they were for a little in bits and pieces?
Well, the numbers don't lie. That the Titans had more possession than the Raiders, but they were only to come up with 1 try, and they've made 14 errors.
Yeah.
Look in contrast to the Canberra side, who have had less time in possession, but were able to target the Titans' middle forwards and get some luck down on their left edge and attack Gold Coast's right edge defensively. Canberra were very clinical with their defence.
Yes. Even this game, if this game occurred like 2 years ago, you think the Raiders absolutely smashed the Titans. But the Titans, yes, I know they weren't that close in the game.
This was the first time the Titans went up against one of the best 6 sides in the NRL, and not a good first impression. This barometer test that they've had, they've gone up against Warriors, got ambushed. Broncos, they had to fight their way to get out of it. Cowboys, they ran right over the top of for the second time in the space of a year. And then their first real test against the Canberra Raiders, and
But
they didn't really meet the standards.
But what I was getting at is, if you played that 2 years ago, the Titans would have been flogged by like probably 50 plus. But it has shown that they have improved massively since then,
Well, I mean,
and are still.
the scoreline
improving.
doesn't reflect it. If Fogarty stays on the park,
Well,
they
yeah.
they probably do tighten the score up a little bit, and they had opportunities, but good goal line defense from the Raiders. It's what you define the Raiders as. They have good defense, and that's what won them this game, as well as going through the middle in the late stages with Sutton and Papali'i.
Yeah.
And Josh Papali'i was definitely a standout for the Raiders. 193 running meters, 1 try, the 3 tackle breaks and the line break. And then his opposite number with Tino Fasua Malawi, 201 running meters, 7 tackle breaks, and making 39 tackles in defence.
Mind you, Josh Papali did that by coming off the bench as
Yes,
well.
he did.
So that's even more impressive.
Now, Easter Sunday clashes. We begin with the results of the Alex McKinnon Cup going the way of the Red V. The Dragons down in the Knights, 22 points to 13.
And what a standout game it was, and I was one very happy candidate as I attended the match.
Well, of course you would be.
In a 21,770 strong crowd. Man, it was a good atmosphere to have pretty much a full stadium back.
Well, both the Knights and the Dragons, you would say that they went at each other early because both the Dragons and the Knights' first try were scored off bomb kicks and misfields.
Yes, very much that was the case. And it went early with that early push and shove in the scrum.
Yeah, what the hell was Clemmer thinking?
I do not know. Probably that maybe he thought, maybe he was feeling a bit of a pressure, and the Dragons might have been getting under his skin that little bit, so it might have made him angry, and he just went at it. And as soon as that, like, pretty much not the first tackle after the scrum, but the next tackle after the scrum, he went straight at him, and man, it was a hit. I'll tell you what was another good hit that knocked out poor old Kurt Mann. That was a bit of a hard hit.
Yeah,
Same was,
but it was good sportsmanship from Tarek Sims
to stop the game.
Well, not only did he stop the game, but he protected Kurt Mann and the trainers, whilst the rest of his teammates and the Newcastle boys were going at each other. That is sportsman.
Yes.
That is good qualities we like to see in our game, and I think that could be worthy of the Ken Stephen Community Medal?
Yeah.
At the Dally M Awards. I definitely think that is a early contender. Right there, right then. And then he backed it up in the second half with his charge downs that produced some very good results for St. George Illawarra, including, you would have to say, and you would probably agree with me on this, a contender for try of the year with the second charge down from Blake Green, who did come back from injury after his ACL reconstruction. Not only was he able to keep that ball in the field of play, but then to run on with it and score a game-breaking try for St. George Illawarra. That just turned the game on its head. And you might have heard my policy about first-half field goals before, but I'll say it again. If you want to take a first-half field goal, be prepared to lose in the second half.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened here.
Yes.
If you're the Rabbitohs, if you're the Dragons in the past, who have kicked first-half field goals only to go down in the second half.
Against the Sharks last year is the first one that comes to mind.
Yes, exactly. And Good Friday 2017. That is another game that comes to mind when you kick a first-half field goal.
And another game that comes to mind with first-half field goals is the... I had it. There was a Knights. Obviously, the game on the weekend. I just had it. We just talked about it. The Dragon Sharks.
We mentioned that one.
Yeah, and there was another one that was, I think I know it was earlier. It was last week when the Raiders got that field goal to start off, like to finish off the first half. But in all honesty, they did.
Raiders and the Warriors.
Yes, But in all honesty, they did have one player left on the bench.
Yeah.
For the whole second half.
Yeah.
But it was still first half field goal, and they did go on to lose the game. So there's three that come to mind.
Yeah, but the Dragons' left edge clicked into gear after after the second half, because it was 13-6 the way of Newcastle. Then Tarek Sims slices through the Knights' right edge defensively the first time, and then he gets that charge down for the second try, and then the Dragons are in control for the rest of that game, and with Braden Williami putting the icing on the cake off a Corey Norman grubber, and that forward pass, that wasn't a forward pass.
From Newcastle?
Yeah, in the lead up to Heimel Hunt's no try.
I'm not biased often, but I'm glad it was a forward pass. Because they in the last probably 5-ish minutes of the game, I was getting a bit worried because, for some stupid reason, we decided to do a short goal line drop out. That didn't go to 10 metres. And then later on, we did another short line goal drop out. That did go to 10 metres, but we didn't get the ball. So I don't know what I think it was Corey Norman. I don't know what he was thinking. Shouldn't have happened, but it did get me a little bit nervous. But in the end, it worked out well.
Well, someone who wasn't nervous was the Sydney Roosters.
Yes.
As winning 32 points to 12 over the New Zealand Warriors. And you'd have to say, Sam Walker on debut, how good was that?
He lived up to the hype, you could say that. There was a slight scare for the Roosters as the Warriors got in front before.
Oh, yes. The Warriors very early with the Adam Pompey try, first up. That was a bit concerning for the Warriors. And then to have that 12-6 lead at one point before the Roosters could even catch their breath, you'd think, oh, hang on, this is going to be a repeat of the Rabbitohs game. But it turns out it wasn't. And they've conceded 6 tries overall, all across the entire 80 minutes. Half of those tries were conceded down their left edge. Brett Morris getting a double.
Again.
Yeah, you just can't keep him out, can you?
No.
Drew Hutchinson scoring. Of course, Josh Morris getting over, because why not? You can't leave Josh Morris out if Brett scores.
Pretty much all the games, well, I think I could be wrong. All the games that Brett Morris has scored, Josh has scored. I could be wrong.
Just about.
But it feels like that way.
Yeah, they're trying to go tit for tat at the moment, and Brett's winning the race. But the Warriors folded in half once the Roosters gained the ascendancy through the middle of the field. And the fact that they were held scoreless, I think that was what would disappoint Nathan Brown the most, that they had this good competitive 40 minutes where they had the Roosters is where they wanted them. But as the game wore on in the second half, the Roosters gained the ascendancy with Sam Walker pulling the strings, and once the Roosters have their tails up, it's hard to chase them down.
And the Warriors would have been going to the sheds pretty happy when they're only 4 points down at half time, as the Roosters
But not happy when they're 20 points down by the end of it all.
Well, no. But even with all the injuries that the Roosters have, they still managed to somehow win the game. And I thought the Warriors could have caused an upset, and it looked like they could have early on, but typical Roosters fashion, comes out and just put them to bed.
Well, I ate my words over tipping the Warriors. And speaking of almost upsets, Easter Monday.
Yes, Monday football was back for
one night only until the Queen's birthday, but for one night only in Easter, it was back.
Yes, and after a bit of a, well, you could say a bit of a scrappy start for the Eels after Ferguson fell over from the kickoff.
Well, that start, the first minute for the Eels was not the best way to start.
They gave Tigers the best field position, and I don't think the Tigers managed to score off that. I think they didn't score until later on in the game.
Well, once the Eels got going in the first half, I mean, through Clint Gutherson, how he managed to get that kick away for Tom Opacek, that still beggars belief.
Well, Tom Opacek, new sign for Eels, and got a double.
Oh, yeah, and of course, Isaiah Papali'i just playing off the middle. Yeah. Once Nathan Brown, Campbell Gillard, and Polo lay the platform, the Eels really just come alive. The offloads from Brown that helped set up Papali'i, that was some pretty good play. And then Ferguson and getting his return serve over the Tigers for fumbling the ball, because that's how the Tigers tries, some of them were scored.
Yeah.
I believe, well, the first try they scored with Dane Laurie, good pinpoint kick to find Luciano Leilua to get the bat back.
Yeah, very much so.
Then they pounced on a Ferguson error that got them over. I'm not sure who scored there, but
Can't remember.
oh no, wait, no, Jacob Little, or no, Stefano Oitukamanu.
Yes, against his old club.
In his first game against the Eels, they managed to bomb Ferguson. They bombed Gutherson, and he was very frank about that. That they were letting their forward pack down because they weren't catching the ball.
Yeah, but Adam Dewey did put up a really good torpedo.
Adam Dewey was really presented a challenge for the Eels, and then the Tigers went on this blitz that got them within 2 after being close to 24-10 down. They come back to 24-22.
And they went to, they went to sleep.
And the Eels were able just to come away with it. Ferguson grabbed his second try. And then the controversial moment of the day was Clint Gutherson onside for when he scored.
I'd say, no, he was offside. That's my call right here, right now.
It looked very, very close. But somehow the video referee said Gutherson onside, and that was all she wrote on that front.
But it does show that the Tigers can push top teams. It was, what was I saying? But Mbai, I don't know, he tried to come up with a miracle play right near the end of the game. They kind of fumbled it and knocked it back and at the Tigers. But the Eels, thanks to, I think it was Blake Ferguson, put it over right on the full-time siren just to put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, well, Mitchell Moses' goal kicking was not really up to scratch. I believe he was only about 5 from 7 by the end of it, or it could have been less.
Well, at one stage, it was only 40% for that game. Like, he only had 40% accuracy.
I think it was only his first game back after getting knocked out, so we can't read into that too much. But
Adam Dewey, I think he got every single converted
he did.
kick. Yeah.
But the Eels were resilient. If this was from last year, when Parramatta were fading out at the back end, you would say the Tigers win. But they've learnt, at this point in time, they have learned from their mistakes, and that while they're not playing their best football now, it's good long-term strategy for when they do come up against the Storm, who they've already beaten, Roosters, Rabbits, Raiders, and Panthers in the back end of the season, that they can win against those other top clubs, and maybe go even deeper than what they have done in the last 2 final series.
Look, I hope they do, in all honesty. Whilst overall, I feel that the scoreboard doesn't really show, like the end result doesn't really show how well the Tigers played. Like, yes, they got back in within 2, but they could have finished it off, but they couldn't quite. But they are on the up, the Tigers. But I still reckon they'll miss out in the finals. In ninth. And Parramatta, of course, joining Penrith as the only side yet to concede a defeat. Yes.
Which brings us to round 5, a look at the sides and prediction for where we think they will end up. Starting off with the Rabbitohs and the Broncos on Thursday night.
Pretty much, they are unchanged. Well, Rabbits are barely unchanged. They've only got the one as Benjamin Marshall is replacing the
Cody Walker.
Cody Walker is out suspended in the 6th. And, well, the form that Marshall's been in, it's going to be good. And Kotula, I'm going to get his name wrong.
Kuala Matangi also suspended for 1 to 2 weeks. So Jacob Host is back into the side for Wayne Bennett.
And Dean Hawkins on the 14th.
Making his debut. Whilst for the Broncos, no Herbie Farnworth as he has been ruled out with injury. So Richie Kennar comes into the centres, and with no Pat Carrigan, Tavita Pangai Jr. moves into starting at lock forward, with Brodie Croft making up the bench with Flegler, Asiata and Ben Teo.
Yes, very much. So a couple of changes there for the Broncos. I don't know how much how much they will miss Herbie Farnworth, because he has been pretty much one of the standout players for them as well this season. I personally feel like he's not the best, but he's one of up there. But I'm not going to see this one being a pretty one for Brisbane.
Well, neither do I. I think the left edge of the Rabbitohs is amongst the strongest left edges in the league, and the defense was very good, whereas the Broncos' morale and defense can be described as non-existent. So it's practically a no-brainer on this part to say the Rabbitohs win 13 plus.
Yeah. Well, I'll say 13 plus, but to be more precise, as I have done all season, they're going to win by 34 points.
Yeah, so that's a big 13 plus for the Rabbitohs. Now,
Yes.
we've got the New Zealand Warriors up against the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles.
Yeah, the way the Seagulls are going, this one ain't going to be pretty. But before we get to that, let's look at the team lists.
There's a couple of changes for Manly. Morgan Harper coming in for Moses Sully. Whether Sully is injured or just bad defence means there's just no other option but to swing the axe. Jack Gajeski holding on just for the moment, but with Ben Trebojevic lurking around in the reserves, this still could be a late change for Des Hasler's side. Whilst for the New Zealand Warriors, Adam Vanua-Blake ruled out in a crucial blow for the Warriors, so Tohu Harris moves into the front row, Jack Murchie to the second row, and Kane Evans joining Tom Ale and Josh Curran on the bench.
But there is a name missing, Bailey Siranen.
As well as Bailey Siranen being ruled out with injury.
Yes. The Warriors are going to miss Adam Vanua-Blake.
The 1-2 punch in the middle, he was forming up with Leeson Armour. They're not going to get that again. And Jermaine Tanoa-Brown still a few weeks away.
Yeah. But they are coming up, well, I've lost for words of what you can describe Manly. It should be an easy victory.
Yeah, defence has been Manly's Achilles heel. As for the Warriors, their combinations have not been very fluid with the loss of both their starting centres and the changing in the forward pack. But overall, the Warriors still boast a very strong pack, even without Vanua-Blake. And you would expect, at some point, Ben Murdoch-Masila to be playing bigger minutes than he has done previously.
Well, I was going to say, look at the bench. You've got Murdoch-Masila there, Kane Evans, Josh Curran, and Tom Ale. Well, I don't really know how well Tom Ale plays, but we know how Murdoch-Masila, Evans, and Curran play. So, they've got a strong bench, I would say. How many minutes will each of them players get? That's a wait and see factor. Is Tuivasa going to absolutely destroy their defence? More than likely. I feel.
I can't think of any way Manly dig themselves out of a hole. That they got nowhere to go, and they're really missing Tom Trebojevic. So I'm going to say the Warriors win 1-12.
Well, I'm going to say another 13-plus victory in favour of the Warriors, obviously. And this one is going to be by 22 points in favour of the New Zealand side.
And now, Friday night at Bluebet Stadium, probably the game of the round, the Penrith Panthers and the Canberra Raiders.
Yeah, this one's going to be a good one. Worth watching. Even if you're not a Panthers or Raiders fan.
Well, I think a lot of neutral fans side with the Raiders, to be honest, because I think...
Well, yeah.
The Raiders are what North Sydney was in the early days of the NRL. They are your second favourite team, almost.
Yeah, but even if you're not a fan of any of these clubs, watch the game.
And some good news for the Green Machine. Joe Tarpany back in the line. And up at lock forward, which pushes Ryan Sutton to the front row, and Dynamis Louis dropping out.
And Ryan James slots back to the bench.
But there could still be a late switch between him and Papali'i again. Sebastian Chris maintaining his spot in the centres with still no word on Curtis Scott's rib injury, although they did say fortnight.
Yes, they did. And with Penrith, absolutely no changes. Why would you need to
This will be game of the round. It will be interesting to see. You got the Panthers, probably number one attack in the league, and the Canberra Raiders amongst the top up few defensive sides.
Yes. I was just about to say, why would you need to change a side that has been dominant, won every single game so far this season, so you wouldn't have to change it.
Well, Penrith wins. They've come up against North Queensland, Canterbury the first 2 weeks, and they've held them to 0.
Yeah.
Melbourne Storm was a much harder challenge, and they were able to come up with the win in the dying stages. And then they faced Manly again. So I think we got to find out where the barometer is with the Panthers, because they've blown 3 shit sides off the park, and were able to hold off against one very good side, aka the reigning premiers. So, how do we measure them up against the Canberra Raiders?
Well, I got a feeling it's going to be a close one, like it was with the Melbourne. How close? Well, I've got Penrith to win by 6, but who knows? If any team could beat like the end of run the Panthers are on, it could be the Raiders.
It's if the Raiders are going to win, they need to match Penrith through the middle of the field, because that's where Penrith have conceded the majority of their tries. It has been through the middle rather than the edges. So you're looking at Papali'i, Sutton, Hudson Young hitting Jerome Luai out on the left edge. That's where most of your tries will be coming from. Or even if you're Jack White and trying to break your way through the right, who on the right. So, but Penrith, they're on a different level, I think, to the Raiders at the moment. So yeah. I'm going to say the Panthers win 1-12. I think Penrith will go 5-0 at this point in time.
Yeah. As I mentioned, the Raiders could put a dent in the form of the Panthers, but like I said, Panthers will still manage to find a way to win, and by 6. Only just.
First of our triple header on Saturday, the Gold Coast Titans up against the Newcastle Knights. Wholesale changes for Adam O'Brien with the injury crisis he has suffered.
I was going to say, it's not by choice.
Yes, and not by choice indeed. Kalen Ponga back at fullback for the first game of the year as Tex Hoy is ruled out with injury. Connor Watson and Blake Green are the new halves combinations, with Kurt Mann and Mitchell Pearce both missing, with Chris Randall, Pasami Solo, Josh King and Brodie Jones making up the bench in a bit of a new look side, would you say, for Adam O'Brien? But again, not by choice.
Well, it's really good news that Kalen Ponga's back. He's come back at the right time. It's a new look bench. Only one player from last week is carried over, which is Josh King. And Ponga's back in a new halves combination. You could say a slightly new team, but pretty much still the bulk of it is the same.
Yeah, the starting pack is relatively the same, even with the loss of Jacob Saifidi to suspension and the questions over David Clemmer. But for all reports, he is there. He probably will start for Newcastle. Whilst for the Gold Coast Titans, only one change with Anthony Dong's absence. Philip Sami's back on the wing, and Brian Kelly's in the centres.
We could see a late change if Ash Taylor comes back, because he has been named in number 21. Could he push Tanner Boyd out on the game an hour from kickoff? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, it could also be the case Aaron Clark could be the unlucky man to miss out with Boyd playing a bit of dummy half for Mitch Rain. But I like what the Titans have got with this balance of Peachy playing in the middle of the field that frees him up as a ball player, and then Big Tino bashing his way through the middle with Jared Wallace. I think Wallace and Fasua Malawi going up against Clemmer and Daniel Safiti will be where the battle is won and lost. We know Blake Green is a very good halfback, but this is only his second game back. He's not going to be up to scratch straight away.
Well, he's technically his first full game.
Yes.
Because he came on midway through the game against the Dragons last week. And he's got instead of having Mitchell Pearce beside him because of his torn pec, it's now Connor Watson, who is, you could say,
the Titans' left edge will be the ultimate strength, and Fafita up against Frizzell. But I think the way Newcastle have conceded tries from charge downs, if they get Fafita into good space against the Knights down their right-hand side, the Titans are going to come away with a strong win. And I think the Titans will go away with a 1-12 win here.
Yeah, I got a feeling this one's going to be close. And when I mean close, I mean a golden point close. We haven't had a
golden point. Which way?
Titans way by 1.
All right, so 2 Titans, 1-12 is what the doctor ordered there. Now, Canterbury Bulldogs and the Melbourne Storm. Couple of interesting things going on for Melbourne at the moment. Felice Kafusi back in the second row. over Craig Bellamy's side, with Tom Eisenhuth returning to the bench. But the big news actually comes in the reserves, with Brenko Lee and Dally M Rookie of the Year from 2020, Harry Grant, listed in the reserves for Craig Bellamy's side.
That is very true. It's good to see that they're in the reserves list, that are obviously possibly even be back this week as the late inclusion, or they'll be back next week and they're just teasing us.
Yes.
But once they're back, they'll be full strength. And
for the first time this year.
Yes, and they'll be probably even more dangerous than what they were.
Yep. Well, meanwhile, a couple of change for the Canterbury Bulldogs. With no Nick Meaney available, Dallin Wateni-Zelezniak returns at fullback, pushing Nick Kotrick out to the wing and Corey Allen over to left centre. Jake Avarillo returns at 5'8", at the expense of Lachlan Lewis, with Luke Thompson to play his first game starting in the front row alongside Jack Hetherington, and with Josh Jackson back, Renofa Tony returns to the bench, and Dean Britt drops from the game day 7 team. There's no real... I think every single word has been used to describe the Canterbury Bulldogs in 2021, and I've got nothing more to say about the Dogs than Melbourne Storm to win 13+. Well, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, they're not as... Yes, I know they're in the bottom 3 with the Cowboys and Seagulls, but they are, out of the bottom 3, the Dogs are the better side, as it's been well documented, even on the ladder. Bulldogs fans are going to absolutely hate me, and Connor probably admitted it himself, and he's going to absolutely hate me too.
No, I'm not hating you. I'm agreeing with you. Look at us.
A very rare time.
The worst team in 93 years. When you're breaking the worst records that have been set in the 1920s, you know you're doing something wrong, especially if you've got free donuts. There's nothing more to say when you're trying to preview the Dogs. It's hurting me, but I have to acknowledge this is what we are.
It's a very rare occasion I actually agree something about the Bulldogs, and that at the moment they're going to get absolutely smashed. We're pretty much, if you're not paying attention, if the Bulldogs aren't paying attention, looking at Iron, Storm will be out by freaking 20 points. But they might... I've got a feeling the Dogs might be in the contest early in the game. I don't know why, but I've just got a feeling they are. But that's going to quickly swing around, and Melbourne will win by 28.
And our final game of Super Saturday, the Sydney Roosters up against the Cronulla Sharks. A big in for the Sharks, with Jesse Ramian starting again at centre, with Connor Tracy dropping back to the bench. And who missed out for the Sharks? Just trying to read
Braden
fresh...
Trindle.
Yes, returns to the reserves.
Yes. And for the Roosters, nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed, except Sam Walker is your starting halfback, and the continued teasing of Joseph Suaalii when he will debut. Who the hell knows, except Trent Robinson.
But I have noticed that Joseph Suaalii's moved up a spot from, instead of being in jersey 21 in the reserves last year, he's up into jersey 20.
Well, I made a big mistake last week by tipping against the Roosters. I'm not going to make the same mistake, especially when your game plan will be Walker, Manu, Brett Morris going at Matt Moylan. That's the strength of where the Roosters will feel they're going to get the most tries out of. Because Moylan's good with the Sharks in attack, but defensively there are still some questions you need to ask about him, especially with the way the Cowboys were able to get back that try last week. That will be a source for the Roosters to go at. Goal kicking, it'll be interesting to see who gets the honours for the Roosters this week after a little bit of chopping and changing. But if they stick with one like Sam Walker, even though he only had one shot, but if they stick with Walker, I feel they're developing their goal kicking depth that can give Taukiaho a bit of breathing room to just run hard, tackle hard, and produce some offloads late with some good footwork.
Yeah, well, as you said, if Walker does the goal kicking, it, as you said, definitely has their stocks a lot more. Especially, like you said, topping changes between Takihaho and James Tedesco. But now Walker's there and Hutchinson can kick as well. Tedesco's fallen down the list pretty fast. And that's pretty much no real surprise there.
It will be, I think, the Roosters' right edge will be the main attacking way to go at Matt Moylan, but that's all I can really say. I don't know how much more the Sharks can really offer. If they can try and match the Roosters in the middle, but with Victor Radley ball playing, that could really cause some troubles either side. I'm going to say the Roosters win 1-12.
Yeah, I say the Roosters will win, but by 13 plus and by 16 points comfortably. By 16 points.
And the first of our Sunday games, we've got the West Tigers against the North Queensland Cowboys at Leichhardt Oval. A couple of changes for the Cowboys. Kyle Felt back in the lineup for the Cowboys, with Tabuai Fidow moving to the centres again, and Murray Talagi pushed out to the left wing. And the biggest inclusion of them all, Captain Jason Taumalolo back in the lineup at lock forward, pushing Ruben Cotter to the reserves.
And Josh Maguire to the bench.
As for the Tigers, only one change, you would say, from the side that went down narrowly to the Eels, with Moses Mbai starting at centre, and Tommy Talau pushed out to the wing, with Asu Kepaoa pushed out, and Michael Cheekham added to the bench.
And I think that's the first time I'm going to see him play all season.
Yes.
I could be wrong.
The Tigers game breaker.
It's good to see Michael Cheekham back, because he is an underrated player, and when he has game time and when he gets the ball a lot, he is a goddamn good player when he gets the ball. So the more game time he gets, the more he can become a permanent starter, which is, I feel, what the Tigers need.
Like the Dogs, the Cowboys, I think every single word has been used to describe the Cowboys. Their defence, particularly down the right edge, is atrocious, and if they line up Talau, Mbai, Luciano Leilua all down that left-hand side, I think at home, and given the Cowboys' historical record at Leichhardt Oval, which is only one win in the last 12 games or so, and some pretty bad margins, there is only one way you can look at this, and the Tigers were very close to beating Parramatta. I think this is where they record their second win of the season. I'm going to say the Tigers win 1-12.
You say 1-12. Well, I say, have a guess. 13 plus yet again. And the Tigers absolutely flogged the Cowboys. Like a lot of other
even with Taumalolo coming back, I think it's too late for the Cowboys. Their season's practically over at this point.
Practically. So the Tigers will win by astonishing 24 points in my prediction.
And the final game of round 5 of the NRL, we have the Parramatta Eels up against the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Jack Bird back in the lineup for the Dragons, with Jackson Ford making way on the bench as Braden Williami drops back to the interchange.
And that's the only change for the Dragons.
Meanwhile, for the Eels, Bryce Cartwright added to the bench for the first time this year as Ryan Madison returns to the second row. Papali'i dropping back to the bench as well. Ray Stone missing out altogether.
And Keegan Hipgrave is also missing out altogether as well.
Well, the Dragons, you're on a 3-game winning run and you're coming up against a top 4 contender.
How we're going to perform, I don't know, but we are right behind them in 5th. Well, I don't know where Parramatta are on the ladder.
They're running second.
Well, we're 5th, so it's either this game, not being biased, or as you said, Panthers Raiders game is going to be one of them 2 games is going to be the game of the round. I don't know which one it is. I have to wait until probably
Gutherson and Ferguson were exposed by Adam Dewey's bomb kicks. I would imagine Adam Clune and Corey Norman will be looking to get a couple of towering torpedoes up, trying to get Gutherson and Ferguson exposed in the air.
Well, even I know we're going back to the Dragons Knights game. Adam Clune had a blinder. He had a really good game, I feel. But if he can continue against Parramatta, yeah, it could be a bit dangerous. But Parramatta are a good side.
I reckon this will be a very, very tight game, and I think the Dragons have a possibility of winning it. But considering where they are playing, which is Bankwest Stadium, which is Eels country through and through.
But isn't Dragons one of the only teams to beat the Eels at Bankwest Stadium?
Amongst the list.
In Paul McGregor's last ever game as coach?
Yes, the Dragons joined the company of the Roosters and the Bulldogs, as well as the Rabbitohs, for having beaten the Eels at Bankwest. But the Eels are demonstrated themselves to be a very resilient side. If the Dragons throw some heat early, I think they'll be able to withstand that and throw some back at their own. But if they can get the left edge going and Micah Sevo some early ball, I think the Eels come away 1-12 victors.
Well, I pretty much said it. It's going to go, I reckon it's going to go down to the absolute wire. 2 reasons. One, that both clubs are in good form, like probably really good form. And 2, they're both very strong teams. I'm going to be slightly biased in this one. But if we lose to this game, I won't be disappointed. I know that sounds stupid, but I'm not going to be disappointed if we lose because of how well the Eels are. But I'm going to say we are going to win by 6.
All right, so that is all of the round 5 action of the NRL. We now move on to the Betfred Super League. We begin with the Good Friday clash between the Wigan Warriors and Wakefield Trinity.
And I actually have Super League notes this week compared to last week. So sorry about that. So Wigan, hang on, what are we doing? The review
of round 2.
Okay, so Wigan and Wakefield. Wigan are pretty much continued on where they have left off after demolishing Wakefield 34 points to 6. Hat trick to Jake Bibby would have helped that cause as well.
Some of the ways Jake Bibby scored to get to his hat trick, not only was it good passing from his inside men, but also the pinpoint kick from Zach Hardacre to set up Jake Bibby for that 3rd try. That was just absolutely beautiful to watch. Of course, John Bateman diving over from close range, and Hardacre scoring off a beautiful long-range break from Liam Farrell, who was playing out of position at centre.
Yes, he was, but he still did astonishingly well.
And the fact that they were able to blow Wakefield off the park in the second half, scoring 5 tries, they were very close to being upset against the Lee Centurions, and then they were able to blow Wakefield off the park. So it is just an indication of where the Wigan Warriors are once they get some players back on the park, with Jackson Hastings playing his first game of the year.
Yes. As I mentioned, Wigan, they're pretty much going on how they were. But you had to look at Wakefield and look at their first 2, even last week. They didn't, I can't remember who they played last week.
They played Leeds last week.
Yeah, that's a strong team. And Wigan this week, so they haven't had the easiest of draws to start off the first 2 weeks. So they could change that. Well, they could, what would you say, improve as the season goes on. Wigan against Wakefield are too classy. You have to say that.
The return of Jackson Hastings probably made a point of difference for the Warriors, especially, really Jake Bibby and Zach Hardacre. That combination is really starting to flourish out on the Warriors' right edge. And the second game of Good Friday, Wigan's old rivals, St Helens, the reigning champions, and up against Hull Kingston Rovers in the Mossy Masoi round. And the 2 clubs, the former Hull KR and Saints forward, played for. And it was St Helens that put on a very strong defensive display, downing the Robins 25 points to 0.
As I said about Wigan, same applies to St Helens. They have continued off, but they have continued off from the grand final win last season. St Helens, that was. They did put 25 points on the board, and Hull KR didn't have any. But in my view, it just shows that St Helens are in another league of their own.
St Helens are a class above, and Hull Kingston Rovers knew exactly what they were walking into. But generally, there was a deflation after that narrow loss to the Catalan Dragons, where they got very close to stealing the win, except for James Maloney's drop goal. But early on, Saints were in charge when you had Theo Farge popping offloads with Jack Ellsby, the setup work for Regan Grace out wide to get at his double, and then not being able to throw anything in return. This is a backline with Crooks, Kenny Dow, Linnett, and Ryan Hall. So if you're not able... Oh, no, sorry, he was back row, Greg Minikin and Kenny Dow with Ryan Hall. But even with that back 3/4, there was just... Hull KR didn't really throw anything at Saints. They were able to repel everything the Robins threw at them.
As I'm about to say, I'll continue on from what I said about St Helens being a league in their own. every other team probably had to play catch up for the whole season, as Saints set in the benchmark. But I feel St. Helens have got a lot more points in this season, and that so far this season are only just warming up.
Well,
So come the back end of the season, they'll be absolutely demolishing teams.
Well, talking of points and warming up, the Warrington Wolves got their first win of the season in flying fashion over the Lee Centurions, putting on 44 points to 12. Gareth Widdop probably played his best Warrington game to date with the two try assists he did manage, and the Warrington left edge is just rocketed itself into the stratosphere against the Lee Centurions.
Yes. Alongside Widdop's double, Kin had a double, and
Tom Lynham
had a double, which obviously is a heap of points there. Alongside the two try scorers were try scorers of Curry and Marmo, and Ratchford kicking 6 from 6, which is a good sign that they've got a good goal kicker, and I've also got backup goalkeepers as well. For Lee, the two tries went to Ryan
Briley and Adam Sidlow.
So,
which one of those was the saving grace with Ben Reynolds coming back to the Lee Sports Village after some time, I believe, with Toulouse Olympique. He set up the Adam Sidlow try from memory, as well as converting both the goals. So he was the only saving grace in what was just another expected performance from the Lee Centurions at this level of rugby league in the UK. It was never going to be easy for them.
Well, considering that it's their first full season, is it since... Because they did replace Toronto Wolfpack, correct?
Yes, they did.
And that was halfway through last season?
Not even halfway. It was basically first 6 rounds, went to 11 teams, and then from the start of this year, it's been back to 12.
So you could say in the first full season back. I reckon you do expect them to struggle a little bit. I feel that they are a work in progress, but they are going to work their way up. As for Warrington, they are a team that is more capable of piling on the points, and they have, in my view, sent a danger signal to the rest of the comp.
Well, someone who is sending signals, the Castleford Tigers recording their back-to-back wins for the year. Their first back-to-back wins for the year, downing the Leeds Rhinos 18 points to 10 in the local Yorkshire derby in St Helens.
So it was a tight match to only win by 8. But as I say, tight games are good games.
Castleford's left edge again shone through. Oliver Holmes picking up his second try in 2 games, as well as Jordan Turner chipping in another good effort. Leeds, you'd have to think the injury toll to Leeds Rhinos has been a detriment to their playing for. With no Walker, no Robert Louis, no Conrad Hurrell, or just the 2 tries down Leeds' right side defensively, and then Niall Evalds adding on the 3rd try. It was basically over in the second half where Leeds couldn't really compete.
Practically it was, but they did manage to get some points on the board, which is better than nothing, of course.
Yeah.
If the game did go longer, could they have caused an upset? Maybe not.
Injuries, just plain and simple, cost Leeds at the end of it, and I feel if they had a lot of players that they didn't have there, or a bit more control from Luke Gale, they would have gone a long way to getting over the top of Cass, but no, apparently no Gareth O'Brien for the Tigers. It's no worries with Danny Richardson coming in and doing a job.
Yes. And
your final results of the 2 games from the 4th of April, Hull FC downing the Salford Red Devils 35-4. And the Catalan Dragons downing the Huddersfield Giants 20 points to 10. And just a couple of quick thoughts from Hull. I definitely think Brett Hodgson, in between the new time coaches, between himself and Salford boss Richard Marshall, Hodgson has enjoyed the better start, considering that the game plan of basically going after Kevin Brown on the right-hand side with Andre Savelio and Josh Reynolds has paid off big time with the tries they scored down there, left-hand channel or defensively, as well as Jake Connor taking charge of that game from fullback when both Reynolds and Mark Sneed were missing. As for Salford, you'd like to see Salford try and do well, as they've already demonstrated they can make the grand final and the Challenge Cup final on good runs, but they just didn't really throw anything at Hull.
Not really. You pretty much mentioned it. Josh Reynolds, he's been playing really good this season. He's had a double this game. Hull got 5 tries and 7 goals across Jake Connor and Mark Sneed. The Red Devils only had the 1 try thanks to Ken Seo. But looking at their squad, they have the team to score more points. But obviously on the day, Hull FC were a better team. Salford, I feel like, need to work on their attack, as they lost both their games this season by a considerable margin. Whilst Hull have also, I feel, sent a warning to the other teams considering the form they are in.
As for the Catalan Dragons, they were able to back up their round 1 heroics against Hull Kingston Rovers against Ian Watson's Huddersfield Giants. Sam Tompkins again was proving to be a menace, setting up the first try for Matt Whitley, and then participating in a good team try that saw Mike McMeekin cruelly go over for the Catalan Dragons right on the halftime siren, despite the best efforts of Jake Wardle chasing Tom Davies down, but then the offload, the touchback that sat up in the lap of Mike McMeekin, and that was pretty much all she wrote, as Catalan were able to hold on against the Huddersfield Giants despite their late challenge. You would have to say they were 20 to go. It could have gone either way when Sam Wood scored the second try after Chris McQueen went over early, pulling apart Catalan's left edge defensively.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the Dragons were able to hold on to their halftime lead of 20 points to 6. With Sam Wood's try the only points of the second half.
Yes. Huddersfield, I feel like that. Well, I'll start again. For Huddersfield to only lose by 10 against Catalans, I feel is a very good effort, as they're not as strong as Catalans. But I think all it came down to was the amount of experienced players across the two teams. Catalans also had a lot, well, in my view, more experienced players than what Huddersfield did. So that's what I feel will go, what it went down to. And I feel like both teams will be aiming to improve their performances heading into the following round.
It's just that Catalan are missing Aiden Caesar. I think that's pretty clear and simple, that had Caesar played both of those games for the Huddersfield Giants, that they wouldn't have conceded 22 points to 10 against Hull FC and then 20 points to 10 against the Catalan Dragons.
But they still got that win, which is always a positive.
Yes, it certainly is. Now, there is no round 3 of the Betfred Super League because between now and then, it is the 3rd round of the 2021 Betfred Challenge Cup, the oldest domestic tournament anywhere in the world of rugby league.
Going for how many years precisely?
Since 1896 without fail, even during the wartime.
Yes.
So, this is only our quick view of the Challenge Cup for round 3. We have got Hull Kingston Rovers going up against the Casper Tigers to get us underway. Of course, the problems we've just well documented with Hull Kingston Rovers. They had all the energy against Catalan, conceded the drop point, the 1-pointer, and then were not able to score a point against St. Helens. Against the Casper Tigers side with their left edge humming very nicely, with the majority of their tries coming in that way. I'm going to say Castleford win 1-12. I think the Robins will look at how to break down defences a bit more easier, and I think they will try and challenge Castleford there. But I think the Tigers will come away and advance to the next round.
Well, this game could be a preview to when Hull Kingston Rovers play Castleford Tigers later on in this Betfred Super League season. And I agree with kind of 1-12 margin for their those Catalans they're playing.
Castleford.
Castleford, sorry. It will be a 1-12 victory for Castleford.
Second game, we're looking at the York City Knights against the Wigan Warriors. Of course, York got their win in the Cup up to advance this third stage, but with the way the Wigan Warriors are playing, even with the recruits they've made like Adam Cuthbertson, Danny Kermon, Ben Jones-Bishop and Ryan Atkins, you're only looking at this thing one way, and this one way will be the Wigan Warriors winning 13 plus.
Yeah, even if the Wigan Warriors weren't playing as well in the actual Super League, going up against a team that, well, they are professional, but like not in the Super League, it's going to be a Wigan Warriors win for a 13 plus victory for the Warriors.
Next up, we've got the Salford Red Devils against former Super League occupiers, the Widnes Vikings. The Vikings got off their championship season off with a 30-all draw against the York City Knights. You can fact check us if we got that wrong. This should be interesting. With Salford having lost both of their games and by big margins, it'll be interesting to see what Widnes offer up in attack. And I'm going to go for an upset. I think Widnes will try and back it up with a 1-12 victory here in the Cup.
Well, I was going to pretty much say what you said, but going off the form that Salford have gone in the first 2 weeks of the Super League, if they carry that form into Challenge Cup, it's going to be a victory for Widnes Vikings. But because it's the Challenge Cup, it's a slightly different competition to the Super League. So I'm actually going to say Salford will win in a 1-12 margin.
The clash of the round coming up at St Helens. It is the reigning champions against the Leeds Rhinos, the defending Challenge Cup champions.
It's going to be a cracker of a game. Both two very good sides. St Helens, as I mentioned, I know it's Super League, different to Challenge Cup. They're in the class of their own. Even in the Challenge Cup, they will be in the class of their own. Leeds, they'll be there or thereabouts, but not quite enough.
Leeds Rhinos will be hoping for reinforcements against St Helens, because if Lachlan Coote plays, they'll put Jack Wellesby in the centres and they'll just continue to chip away at their defences, whether it's left edge, right edge, or even matching them through the forward packs through the middle with Alex Walmsley. And potentially, who knows, maybe Morgan Knowles might make his first appearance of the year in a cup tie. But I'm going to go St Helens 1-12.
I completely agree with Connor. St Helens 1-12 over the Super League opponents, Leeds Rhinos.
And the second part of the doubleheader at the Totally Wicked Stadium, the Catalan Dragons up against Wakefield Trinity. Of course, Wakefield competitive against Leeds Rhinos in round 1 before being blown off the park by the Wigan Warriors in round 2. Catalan with very good defensive displays to be able to hold out Huddersfield in the second half with only one try conceded. Even with Mason Leno coming up against Josh Drinkwater and James Maloney, I think there is a class difference. And I think the right edge, when Sam Tompkins swooping round with Tom Davies and Mike McMeekin, I'm going to say Catalan win 1-12.
Yeah. Wakefield, like I said, Wakefield, they haven't got nowhere. They've got a strong team, but not as strong as Catalan's. Catalan to win 13 plus.
And next we have got the Featherstone Rovers playing host to Hull FC. Well, again, despite Featherstone's good start to the year, winning their championship round 28 points to 18 over the Batley Bulldogs, they are coming up against one of the only few sides in Super League that have gone undefeated, joining the company of St Helens, Catalan, and the Wigan Warriors and Casper Tigers. And with the way, depending what happens with Josh Reynolds and Mark Sneed, if either one of them play with Ben McNamara coming in, Hull is still in a very good position, and there will still be a lot of people remembering the emotion and the fireworks that came when these two last met in a cup tie back in 2018, which was basically a whole lot of people getting sin-binned and one send-off in a spiteful 38-18 win for Hull FC. And I'm going to say Hull win 1-12 here.
Well, Featherstone Rovers, they were an ex-Super League, or used to be in Super League.
They have been challenging for Super League in the last couple of years, only missing out to the Toronto Wolfpack in the 2019 £1 million game.
Well, I'm going to go for the upset. I reckon Hull FC may struggle if, based on that, Mark Sneed and Josh Reynolds is not playing. So I'm going to say the Rovers will get up over Hull FC by 1-12.
And our final two clashes of round 3 of the Betfred Challenge Cup, the Swinton Wines against the Warrington Wolves. I think, despite Swinton's start, and this is a bit vague because they're only just starting their season up in the Betfred Championship, you got to acknowledge the goal for the class difference. Despite the 28-20 loss to Oldham, they are going up against the Warrington Wolves, who just tore apart the Lee Centurions. So I'm going to go with a Warrington 13+ victory.
Shut the gate for Swinton Lions, coming up against one of the class clubs of the Super League. Warrington Wolves will win, but 13+ points.
And our final game, in the Lee Centurions against the Huddersfield Giants. Of course, Lee were competitive against Wigan in the early stages of round 1 before Warrington blew them apart in round 2, whereas Huddersfield held out by Hull FC and then held out by the Catalan Dragons, only managing to post one try either side of the break in round 2, and of course not being able to break down the whole defence in round 1. But I think Ian Watson will work out the kinks in the Giants' armour, and hopefully he's hoping Aiden Caesar comes back, but as it stands, he's not due back for 2 weeks. But with the golf difference between the way the Centurions and the Giants are set up, I'm going to get for a Huddersfield 1-12 victory.
I reckon Lee Centurions and Huddersfield Giants, they're round about, how I see it, they're round about the same as each other, like team-wise, just my personal view. But I got a feeling that, where is it? I'll let you do that. Sorry. I reckon Lee will just get over him.
So you're going to go with the Centurions getting their first win of the year in both league and cup fixtures.
Yep.
All right.
That's a bit of an upset.
Well, that's your call. You're entitled to make it.
I'll probably be wrong, but who knows?
We'll see.
I feel like the Challenge Cup is like a completely different competition to what the
It
Super
separates the would-be Super League contenders from the pretenders. Put it that way.
Yeah.
The Wembley hangover is real on that front.
Yes.
Well, that is full time from us. I hope you enjoy the 5th round of the NRL and hope you keep an eye out for your team's action in the Challenge Cup 3rd round. If you like what we do here, please leave a like and subscribe to the Sideline channel so you never miss a week of rugby league. And we will join you next week. From Mark Hendry, out of the concrete boots, and from Connor Marcellus, hope you enjoyed this. You have been listening to the Sideline Chat podcast. Bye for now.
Bye.